Hello and welcome to Future Proofing. I'm your host Ekalavya Varun, and this show is presented by vPro, built for business. In this show, we talk about Web3, blockchain, Metaverse, and all the applications and implications it's going to have in various fields like say advertising, sports, healthcare, politics, music, and lots more. Personally, I started my podcast journey long back. I think it was 2010. Really unsuccessful podcast, I would say. It was called Let's Crack. And surprisingly, that too was about advertising. Today's episode is special. We are talking to Varun Duggirala, one of my favorite podcasters and also a very dear friend. Varun has been saying advertising is dead for nearly 4 years, with incredible experience of setting up and selling off a really successful agency, being a great author and also an extremely successful podcaster. Be sure to join us after this quick Intel vPro break as we dive into a fascinating conversation about the world of advertising and the implications Web3 is going to have in it. Welcome back. In our studio today is one of my favorite podcasters and a very good friend of mine, Varun Duggirala. Welcome, Varun.
Thank you for having me, man. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Varun, today's episode is all about advertising. And we want to talk a little about the evolution of advertising. And who better to talk to than a person who's been saying advertising is dead for nearly 200 episodes, right?
Yeah. It's been dying slowly, I would say, over the last 4 years. At least if my podcast is something you go by. But yeah, it's been an interesting time to look at the ad space. So tons to talk about.
Varun, so we'll get straight into it. But before we complicate this episode and talk about blockchain and crypto and metaverse, let's talk a little about the evolution of advertising, right? Tell me, what's the first ad that you remember?
The first ad I remember is actually washing powder Nirma. The reason why I remember that ad is I used to watch a lot of television as a kid. I tried to watch a lot of it. My mom had a rule saying that whenever the Nirma ad would come, I'd have to close my eyes. So even now, instinctually, if I ever hear that ad, my eyes close, because as a kid, for me, it was like, this is the point. Like, it comes on, close your eyes. That's the way you have less screen time.
Yeah.
So my mom was like screen time notification way before there was screen time notifications. But yeah, that's the first ad I remember.
Then what? Let's talk a little about the evolution. So this I'm assuming was a TV ad.
Yeah, this was a TV ad, like back in the 80s.
And probably because of the jingle, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the web, right? So the web got famous in India. Like the web came into being in India probably mid-90s, early 2000s, right? Tell us your first experience of advertising on the web.
I think one of the first things would be banners, right? I mean, I didn't even know it was called a banner. I just thought it was one of those things that was just there, and you would try to figure out how to browse the web and go through it all, and then suddenly you would see these things pop up, and then pop-ups.
Pop-ups took over the internet.
Initially, it was like, okay, this is interesting. There seems to be some motion here, but eventually there's so many pop-ups. I mean, I remember there were sites where the pop-ups were like you literally saw, I think, 100 pop-ups and had to go through them to really find the actual site. So I think my first visual of advertising online was just like random pop-ups saying this offer. I think Sher Khan would be one of the earlier ones.
I was just going to ask you that, right? Like, what was the first banner ad which you probably clicked on?
Sher Khan. I clicked on it. I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, the stock market. I have no money to put into stock market, so I left. But I still remember that was one of those. I think the initial brands which really put a lot of focus onto that very early web. Would you call that Web 1? Was that Web 1?
It was pretty much, right? Like, and at that time, I think they were one of the first guys to get the stock market on, right?
Yeah.
And those were the early adopters, the finance guys, and we are seeing the fintech wave now, right?
And imagine, like, that was so complicated. I think I still remember, I tried to figure out Sher Khan. So I want to understand this and all that stuff. And my dad's like, one thing, why are you going to Sher Khan? I haven't given you any money to put into this. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what this is. But it was super complex, like in hindsight.
Probably, right? But things have evolved, and which is why we are now in the fintech wave, right?
Yeah.
Like so many unicorns in the fintech space trying to make life a little uncomplicated for us. Then let's talk about it, right? Like, so we spoke about banner ads and pop-up ads, right? Then I think slowly Web 2 evolution started, right? And then how have you seen advertising change in Web 2 with communities coming in, social media coming in?
So if I kind of go back to my own journey, right? And it started around that time, is that was working television, was in MTV and Channel V, and then kind of quit to start the glitch of. And we one of those people who would go to brands saying you need to advertise online, put a video ad over there. We'll create video content for you online. And the practice largely was take a television ad, drop it on the internet. Otherwise, just use banners. I think banners were largely what was being used and kind of put out there and stuff like that. And that was really the practice. But over time, I guess there was a way in which we realized that you have to integrate it more for the experience of the web. You're basically taking something which is physical world and putting it onto the web. Yeah, true. And at some point, I think it flipped.
I think earlier the video Web2 strategy was just taking your TVC and putting it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And then slowly the word of branded content came in. We did a lot of work, back in MTV for brands, for branded content. Then tell me, like this whole community aspect, and we are leading to Web3, right? Like Web3 is more about community, privacy, trust, and all of them had the roots probably in Web2, right? So tell us some of your Web2 marketing experiences, like some of the fan pages which you used to follow, or celebrities who used to interact with. As
my earliest thing to actually show your interest was a platform called Orkut. Orkut was, I think, Google owned it, right?
Google owned it just before Facebook became, when Facebook was still very close.
So you'd have like Orkut interests and things would show up, and at some point Facebook came in and said, what are you interested? I still kind of, I went back to Facebook, and I say went back because we don't go to Facebook as much anymore. And I realized I still had a lot of interests which were still likes, like, some of the bands you ideally put in or movies you were watching. And I think that was it. It was almost signaling to the world, these are my interest areas. And then moving to a friend experience, but you were just signaling in a way that wasn't really out there as much as I'm seeing Web3 moving towards. But over time, as the community aspect grew, it was about finding not just the people who have similar interests, but figuring ways to interact with them on a constant basis, really build that into the mix of things. And that's where the shift really went, saying, okay, how can I look at this from a community aspect and not just from okay, let me just put stuff out there and not interact. As interactions and
engagements and interaction. That's what like seeded Web2, right? Like suddenly the consumer could talk to the brand also. And probably fan pages came in, right? And every brand suddenly wanted to have a fan page and do content, and it gave them a sense of ownership. But then do you see somewhere down the line like that dwindled out because maybe too many brands came on social media, and the end consumer suddenly was like, bhai, like, should I have friends or should I have brands or should I make friends with brands?
And like, because at some point, what are you coming to a brand page for, right? I think a lot of brands forgot that. They were like, okay, let me create as much content out there, go with volume, like 5 posts a day, 6 posts a day. I remember those days, and you were like, why are we making 5 to 6 posts a day, right? Who's coming to your page to like?
And every brand was wishing you good morning.
You did good morning. Basically, it's like a family WhatsApp group, right? I think all brand group platforms were that. But at some point, we realized that engagement was more important. Again, like communities are all about engagement, right? And there was a flip, I think it happened about 4 years ago. When brands started talking about, okay, how do I kind of build content on social media where people are coming to me for my content and not necessarily for my brand. So how do we go more editorial? And that flip really brought in a few things, right? Made brands look at their personality online differently, looked at the content they were making differently. It has to be entertaining. It has to be value adding.
Give us some examples of brands which you think have done some really good work. And it's okay, you can quote the brands which you also worked on, right?
No, I have one example of a brand which we worked on, which is Netflix. If you look at Netflix, is literally it's basically a fan of all forms of content. So if you go to their content on YouTube, on Instagram, anywhere else, you'll see that they're not just like, okay, this is what's coming on Netflix. It's like just literally fandom out there. And that's what people really gravitate towards, and that's what a large part of what we worked on with them. Another brand which I love in terms of how they do this is a brand like Zomato, right? I think on a very base level, that personality really comes through. It's almost like it's that meme creator you follow for fun is literally Zomato. So I think keeping it in that sense, giving it a personality, looking at it from a content lens rather than a brand lens has really helped some of the brands build followings. But I think for larger them still do the same thing, right? And I feel for others who don't want to go the personality route, it actually has been, okay, I'm pushing the product towards you. I'm giving you value in terms of sale. Let's just do that. Let's not do the other stuff. And that's also been great. You just need to make that choice.
So, now we're talking slightly about Web3, right? And Web3 is also community driven, and it's openness and privacy. And, speaking to other brand managers also, a lot of brands have also realized that initially what you spoke about, right? These communities used to exist on probably their on another platform, right? Like you mentioned, Orkut, I think brands had yet not come to Orkut, but Facebook, we remember fan pages, Twitter handles, Instagram posts. And then, like what you said, right? Like people were following the personality of a brand and they would probably like the fan page or follow. And a brand would think, okay, great, now if someone is liking me, all my content will get seen, right?
Yeah.
But somewhere that didn't happen, right? Because these platforms started charging these brands, right?
Yeah.
And probably we're taking a step back to like early 2000s when there was a lot of these like brands. Every brand had a micro site, right?
Yeah.
With games, etc. So now when we're talking about Web3 and Metaverse and brands trying to step into that, like we want to talk a little about that. But before that, right, what does the Metaverse mean to you, Varun?
The Metaverse for me is to take a virtual experience and not make it seem two-dimensional, make it immersive. You got to take the internet is still a flat screen you're looking at. Can you be involved inside it? Can you actually experience what's going on there? And that to me is the Metaverse. Obviously, enough sci-fi stuff has been watched in life to be able to say this is how I visualize it, and many of those things come in. I mean, Ready Player One is a movie I kind of go back to immediately in terms of how it could be visually. But I feel more than that, it's about how you can build this engagement and interactive and give it more depth.
Okay.
Because in many ways, what you're still trying to do is give a deeper experience on, and at some point for you to go beyond that, you will have to go beyond just that screen, right? And I think I look at it that way.
It's like gamifying.
Yeah, gamifying
brand
it,
existence.
creating spaces in terms of experiences. You know, how can a brand today create an experience that is online that doesn't feel like I mean, at some point, it's like saying, okay, let's have an experience where people come together as a community and hang out when you're on a Zoom call.
Okay.
It's never going to be fun, but it's going to be as fun rather as if it was physically. But could you replicate that in a virtual environment where you're all together, you're all in your avatars?
Okay.
It could be fun. You might not necessarily be consuming something.
Okay.
But I still feel the immersiveness of it will bring a different kind of fun to it altogether.
So that's a nice way of putting like, so maybe a platform where you can connect virtually with people and probably brands come in. So where do brands come in now? So like, will brands like to create their own metaverse or be part of existing metaverse? And we are seeing this whole tokenization, the token economy, which is around the corner, right?
Yeah.
So like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think now more than ever, at a foundational level, brands need to look at how strong their brand actually is.
Yeah.
Because for you to be able to be in a slightly more three-dimensionally immersive space, for you to stand out, you can't be a pop-up ad in the Metaverse. Although I'm sure someone's thought about it. I'm sure someone's thought about a pop-up ad.
Already pop-up blockers for the Metaverse.
You can't get into a space till this pop-up gets crossed off. But I feel what you can actually do is, I mean, look at a brand like a Nike, look at a Wendy's, look at some of these, right? Great brand recall. You know the persona of the brand. You know what kind of content, what kind of products they have. So they can easily create their own spaces within the Metaverse. Because this is like almost like Nike World or Nike Land.
Have you been to Nike Land?
No. I as much as I'm talking about it, I have not put on a VR headset ever.
Do you think people will, but?
I think people will.
Okay, now let's talk about Nike, right? So sorry to cut you, and we'll talk about your Wendy experience also, because that's a really good case study. Tell me about Nike. Okay, so now imagine, right? So you've not been to Nike Land. Nike Land exists. Okay, so Nike Land exists. It's on Roblox, and they're in fact one of the brands which do a lot of cool stuff. Now let's imagine, right? Like you love Nike. Okay. Now imagine, how do you think if you were to structure a Web3 metaverse for Nike? What do you think people would be doing over there?
One of the things Nike has is, I think there's certain not just badge value. I think there's a value to just the tick, the logo which it has.
Okay, of
so
course.
Same way how you would wear the sneaker in the real world, same way you would wear the apparel in the real world, you would want to wear it in your avatar in the meta world, if that's the word to use.
So this is where I have an issue with, right? I'm going to Nike Land, okay, and I'm maybe buying or getting some virtual gear of Nike. Within Nike Land. Like, that's what I don't understand, right? Like, I'm sure there has to be some overlap of metaverses or some games. Like, why will I as a Nike fan be so convinced to be part of the Nike metaverse? Because what about the other brands, right? Like, as soon as
I don't think it'll be entirely a separate space. I feel at some point it's like almost like, you roam across the world, but you can go to Disneyland, you can go to Universal Studios, you can go to a Nike experience store, you can walk into Fab India's experience store. I'm just like, so, but the point is you're going from store to store, but inside the stores, if you look at how stores have evolved, larger stores have become experience centers. Like if you go to an Apple store globally, you're not going there as much to buy as you're going for the experience of it. A Peloton store or even like Decathlon, right? So imagine taking that and putting it virtually. You're going in for that experience. But it can't just be in its separate island. It has to have more things around it. So maybe you kind of get out of a Nike store and you have a space there. You can interact with more people. But you are wearing Nike apparel. Someone else is wearing Nike shoes also. Once again, I'm also a sneakerhead. You're a sneakerhead. And how you can connect it to the real world also could really be if you buy a physical pair of sneakers. Do you get the virtual pair for free?
I think, Balenciaga did something really cool. And it's, so Balenciaga did actually something on Fortnite. So rather than creating their own world, they did something on Fortnite where they basically said that whatever you buy in real life, you actually get the wearable aspect of it on Fortnite. I think it was more PR because I have not played Fortnite, and Fortnite for me, I don't think it is a metaverse in the description of a metaverse because at the end of the day, it's a game, right? It's a console game. Probably you can wear your VR headset and play it. But I think that was a really cool thing, probably an in-game placement. But honestly, I think it's more PR than, what would you say, more PR than actual usage?
I think initially in every new thing that happens, I think this happened with the internet as well, right? When content online became a thing, I would say the first 2 to 5 years is going to be gimmicks, because gimmicks are what gets people's attention.
Yeah, completely.
And eventually you find more, I would say, deeper ways to kind of use it. I mean, another good example of this is simply like, if you look at stuff like, I remember that we'd worked on interactive videos back in the day. We've done like series where there was level of interactivity. And over time that, once it becomes more serious, then you can obviously evolve in terms of how it functions. But I feel the one thing we need to think about when we're looking at this thing, you're not recreating the world. You're finding your space within it. Because end of the day, how human beings will interact will always be the same. So if you look at the value of real estate in the metaverse, I was reading about this, I found an interesting thing that Snoop Dogg bought some space in the metaverse. The real estate value around where the Snoop Dogg space is has gone up.
Yeah, his neighbor paid some ridiculous amount of money.
People want to kind of be around, right? It's the same way, like if you are next to a space that has more footfall, and if you're around there, you're that one, for lack of better thing, you're that pawn shop near a bar, for lack of better example. He has a lot of footfalls because people come to that bar, right? Similarly, I think that's really going to be the difference. Brands need to think about where they're placing themselves. Put themselves in an island and not really next to a space that has more people interacting with different things. Like be in the mall, don't maybe make your own shop.
Maybe. That's a nice example. Let's jam on it, right? Like, so maybe, do you like burgers?
Yes.
So let's talk about burgers, right? And that's also an example which you want to talk about. So we'll talk a little about that. How do you see, imagine we are doing a burger metaverse, right? Let's jam on it. Like, what do you see will happen in a burger metaverse?
So think about this, right? If you look at even 3 to 4 burger chains, you will like the burgers in some, you will like the fries in the other. You might like the space in terms of where you're sitting and how the vibe is in the other one. But maybe the shakes are good in the third place. That's why you go to a food court. Now, I would rather similarly in the same way kind of go in the metaverse. I can pick one thing from one place, one thing from another, and
that's
go across.
That's confusing. Metaverse, like you're talking about virtual food.
Virtual food, yeah.
I'm not convinced. Why will you pay for virtual food, Varun?
Because I think the gamification of it is going to always be there.
How do we game? Probably just adding on. Maybe we gamify with real life. Maybe you buying burger from, say, McDonald's, and it gives you a token or some points, and which enables you to probably build your virtual house or something, right? In the metaverse. It reminds me of like early Farmville days when people would play Farmville.
Because we enjoy that. I think we as human beings enjoy replicating how we live physically into virtual environments. I mean, and this is like a random idea, right? Like imagine if I am a protein powder brand. Imagine I'm MyProtein. How do I get myself into the metaverse? I'm like, if you come into the MyProtein side of things and you kind of, let's say you take some of the protein tokens, you might seem more muscular in the virtual space, right? We give you those add-ons. your t-shirt suddenly pops up, or you get like muscles online. You never know, right?
Or maybe, you know what, I spoke about Nike, right? And Nike did something interesting with LeBron in Nike Land, where during the All-Star week, they actually got people to do a real life activity, a physical activity, and gave them, virtual currency for that. Because when someone says metaverse, just sitting on your couch with a VR headset will make everyone fat and lazy, right?
Yeah. And that's the movement is important, right?
Yeah.
I was watching, and I think in recent times, I've seen this a lot, and which has made me consider, should I even consider buying one at some point, is I've seen people with not just the say Oculus, but also the hand part, right? I've seen people playing cricket using that. I think the cricket thing I've seen so...
tactile
exactly,
haptic
right.
feedback.
Now imagine the same way you are saying, I think one of the first things you can actually take is you can take workouts into the virtual space.
Since you mentioned the protein band.
You can do that. You can take, you interact with other people, and I don't know how that would work in general. But over time...
Probably people of your same frequency, right? Maybe you go to the gym and you just don't like the people in your gym, right? You don't like the music and you finally that's a good idea.
Because if you look at all the virtual fitness experiences right now, look on even like Apple TV, even Apple Fitness Plus, etc. They're all again on a screen.
Yeah.
You're working out, you have one coach on the other side, they're telling you what to do. But now again, that's immersive. You're in the middle of, you can turn left, you can see someone, you can turn right, you can see somebody else. I think the immersiveness is always going to be there, but I think the fun will come from gamifying it, from giving you those coins. Maybe those coins get you into a concert, like you said, can get you into, maybe you spending more time in the NBA space in the metaverse can get you maybe a ticket to go to for an actual game someday.
That's interesting. On that note, Varun, we'll take a quick Intel vPro break. See you on the other side of this. Welcome back in conversation with Varun Duggirala. So Varun, what will get you to join a metaverse? Because we spoke about Nike, but you've not seen the Nike metaverse yet, right? So, with the token economy, etc., is it a discount firstly? If Nike says, Varun, come to my virtual store and I'll give you 25-30% off, will that get you on, or what will get you on, or if your friends are on it already?
I think a mixture of a few things, right? One is the fact that how I'm actually getting into it, like, is the immersiveness of what I'm wearing physically in the physical world something I can do for a long period of time? Because the first few times I have tried, let's say, an AR headset or VR headset, at some point in time you do get tired, right? Because it is tendency to get nauseous, all that stuff happens.
Technology is still not completely there.
You're not there to be fully immersed into it. But would I go in for some value if it's giving me many pro? I think in today's world gives me enough pros in the physical world. Okay, I'll go onto the meta world. Okay, and I think eventually it will become the other way around, where you'll have you'll focus a lot more on what you do virtually and then some in-person things. But I think right now the skew is still the other way around. Okay, but I don't think it's as much about finding, are my friends there? Okay. I think it's a lot more about saying, what can I really explore over there that will actually make me want to put this on? Okay. Until now, there are few things there. It's not as many things, but as that expands, I think that's what will get me in there. But if I'm getting a good offer, and I'm a person always happy
get you to sample, right?
I'll go in for sure. Try it out. Getting a good offer, why not?
Let's think as a marketing manager now. Now, let's not think as users for a while. And you and me, we always try to be the first ones into this metaverse. Now, let's take a step back, right? Now, imagine I'm the marketing manager. Why do I want Varun to come to my virtual metaverse? So probably because it's my KRAs, basic advertising, right? Some basic tick marks. But honestly, I want to know more about Varun, right? Because that's what most brand managers want. You get a consumer and so that you can talk about retention marketing and keeping the same customer with you for life, right? Yeah. So it honestly, in today's world, and I'm slowly moving to a conversation which is, hotly debated when we speak about Web3, is privacy, right? Yeah. So maybe having Varun in my metaverse, okay, and convincing him to, part with his data, probably in the form of a token which I take from him or I give him, is maybe a reason enough to convince him to come on. As a marketing manager, maybe I want a lot of data, right? And we spoke about Web2, so data came in, analytics came in, right? And as we move into Web3, a lot of push has come with people are coming with privacy. Where is privacy? Privacy has become a hotly debated topic. Probably not much in India, but internationally, if you'll see, privacy was hand in hand with Web3, right? What are your views on privacy?
So, privacy is a tricky one, right? Because it's obviously spoken about so much in terms of the importance of it. And it is important in many aspects. But if you look at it, a large amount of people across the world very easily give up their privacy.
For what? For convenience?
For convenience, for customization. Like, am I getting the best possible experience that's personalized to me because I've given up some part of my personal data?
Give me an example, probably.
Look at Instagram, right? I think Instagram's a great example. The more I kind of go towards what my interest levels are, the more customized the kinds of posts I see, and the more the algo becomes in that genre of like, okay, you've been watching this kind of content, so I'll give you more of that. Also, I know sometimes we all talk about it, but the fact that you might just, I've never done this. I'm looking for a sofa. I'll go near my phone with Instagram open and say, sofa, I'm looking for a sofa.
Yes.
Right. And weirdly enough, after like 5 minutes, you'll see an ad for a sofa, right?
That's creepy, bro. But everyone's aware of it, right?
We know about it. But I think that while at one point becomes creepy, and one point we are like, no, it's just helping me when I need it to help me.
I'm too lazy to type sofa on my Google.
Like, I don't know who's having ads right now, who's selling it, but I think the point is that we are willing to give it up to an extent. I feel where it's trickier is when it's, let's say, financial data, health data. I think some of those are more, I think those are a little bit more under lock and key.
Cred does that. Yeah. And we had this conversation earlier also. So probably a platform like Cred, which is probably deeper than just paying your credit card bills, right? Like they want to set up this entire ecosystem of, consumers who they have a lot of data on, right? And they actually say that if you give us your financial data, and that's what you do, a check-in, and they can check your mail, and they can tell you your expenses, etc. Where does it become scary? And what are you okay with?
That's a good example, right? So with Cred, for instance, I've given them access to a bunch of things. I haven't given them access to a bunch of things. Like I didn't give access to bank account, for instance. Like, because you can run through the email to look at your bank account statements and get that. I didn't give access to that. They have access to my credit data. And that's a choice I made. So, okay, I'm not comfortable giving that out to a platform. I'm okay with it just being with my bank because I anyway monitor that separately. So I think it's your call. I think the decisions with the consumer to say, how much do I want to give up? And how much do I want to retain with myself? But I feel that choice is important. I don't think everybody wants 100% privacy. I also don't think anybody wants 100% like you can know like every single aspect of my life. I think somewhere in between there lies the answer. It's not going to be any different in the Metaverse or in Web3 as compared to Web2 or before. Because end of the day, human beings are making those decisions to say how much am I willing to kind of put out there in the open.
Agreed. You said something very interesting, right? You when we spoke about the sofa, right? So you said, assuming, right? Everyone's listening. All the apps are listening, right? So when you say something like, I want a sofa, are you trusting that Instagram already has so much of your data that through your data and through what you like and what you dislike,
and me saying sofa,
they might be able and they might be able to actually curate an offer which is better than an offer which you might reach out to normally? Probably that's why AI comes in, right?
I think it's discovery as well, right? They might show me an option which I don't know about, and many times, and that's been my thing, right? The more and more, and I think with all algorithms, you can actually fine tune them for your own experience. It's like, look at Twitter, look at Instagram. The more you consume a certain kind of content, you see a lot more of that. You're creating your own bubble in that sense. But that is you giving up the fact that I do enjoy this kind of content. So you can kind of get something back towards it.
Agreed.
If you at some point turn around and say, okay, I'm not working for the platform, making the platform work for me. If you flip that around and you use it with that mindset, I think privacy kind of flips around to being convenience. But if you are saying, okay, I will say yes to everything and I'll give you all my details and at some point not think about it at all, that's when your privacy becomes a bit of a question because you don't know where that's going.
But does it have a price?
It does have a price.
If Cred was to tell you, Varun, will give you like cashback, unlimited cashback if you give us access to what you've not given access to, right? And it's not, we're not just talking about Cred, right? Hypothetical example, where a lot of people say that you give me more data, I will give you, it's like a barter of sorts, right? And you're saying everything will eventually have a price, or there's some place where there'll be a full stop?
Everything has a price. The thing is that at some point, those who are willing to pay that price or have the capability to pay that price will pay it and have more privacy. And then people who can't will end up giving it up because they don't have any other option.
This is quoting you from one of your posts, right? Like advertising then becomes a tax of the poor, right?
I was quoting Scott Galloway.
Okay.
But yeah, he said that. If you look at it, I mean, beyond the harshness of that statement, it is true, right? Look at it this way. Look at someone who doesn't subscribe to an ad-free experience on, let's say, Spotify or on a Hotstar, anywhere else, is doing that because they don't want to or aren't able to pay for it.
Okay.
Whereas everybody who has those subscriptions, because it's something they're willing to pay for, they can pay for it.
Yeah.
That's why it's literally a tax.
I have to add something funny over here, right? Unless it's advertising folk. Because I've realized that a lot of advertising, people who work in advertising, once they pay to remove ads, then they don't know what's happening in the world.
I paid for it on day one. I worked in advertising long enough. Day one, I got the option, I paid for it. Everybody asks me, how can you do that? I'm like, sorry, this is me being a consumer. I am the consumer who does not want to see ads. But I agree. There are a lot of advertisers who say, actually, I know some people who actually have 2 email IDs to make 2 separate accounts.
So that they can see who are the brands which are spending.
Yeah. So they will actually go with like an ad experience when they want to actually look at what's going on. And sometimes the other. But I mean, I think a majority of them have it. They just don't say it.
You know, I personally moved to YouTube Premium mainly during pandemic, due to home workouts, because like 3 minutes into your home workout,
I took it day one. So I am that person who will pay for a subscription which takes an ad away immediately, right? All ad blockers are on, everything. Like I literally don't see most advertising anywhere. But I mean, and that's the reality, right? And at the end of the day, that is going to be that is the ideal consumer experience. And if that is the ideal consumer experience, there is something in advertising that is broken. Hence why advertising is dead happened, right? Is that there is something broken in that experience. And the only way to unbreak it is to be a part of the process and not be an interrupter. I feel most advertising still works in like let me interrupt this thing that you're watching or this thing that you're doing. Like that pop-up in the Metaverse, the example is that. Imagine you kind of walking into a Nike space versus one big Nike like virtual wall that comes in front of you saying you have to look at this for 30 seconds before you can virtually walk into this experience you want to.
People just walk away, right? That's what I've seen a lot of younger people these days. If an ad pops up, they rather not see the video. And I've seen this on Twitch, right? Like where some streamers who have probably a ad before you even go into the stream. I've seen people say, rather not watch this guy's stream than waste just 30 seconds.
But if it is content like, and I think some of the best ads, even on streams, even on YouTube, etc., are when the ad itself is entertaining by itself. Like, I mean, I look
That's
at some
creativity also
and some YouTubers make it so much fun that you are watching that ad for the fun of it, saying, how are they going to talk about this, right? How are they doing this? And I think that's really something which has changed and is going to change more and more, is that you got to make it entertaining. You got to make sure the value you're providing is upfront as well. But also it needs to seem like it's a seamless part of the experience and not like, okay, what is this? This doesn't feel like a part of what I was consuming right now.
True. You know, Varun, just adding on to that and something which we spoke about, a lot of advertising has become technology-led, right? And that's where there's something which not a lot of people like to talk about is the ad tech tax, right? Because you have, whenever you go to a website, there are like billions of cookies, right? Like now some websites still tell you, and then you're shocked, right? Like 75 different cookies. And now obviously everyone just rejects all. Like, I don't know people who will accept all,
I accept all.
You accept all cookies everywhere.
I mean, unless it's a site which I have a problem with. So I think most times I get an accept all when I'm either going to like a publication which I want to read an article which says, I'm like, I want to read this, so I'm accepting it. And I like their articles to show up in my search again. Again, I'm choosing that because there are publications who I want stuff to show up. Or sometimes, I know, weirdly enough, when you go to a company's website, when you're just checking something which they've done, and I go to a lot of companies' websites because I look at business models and stuff. I'm like, what would you do with my cookies? Like, I'm like, what would the cookies take from me? Because it's a corporate site.
But behavior data tracking,
but
right?
It's a corporate website. What are they going to get from me?
So, see,
I'm not even a consumer. I'm just like, I'm literally looking at, like, for example, if I'm going to a website that is a SaaS product for, I'm trying to think of the most random example, for medical practitioners. No connection to me. I've gone there because I was curious about something. I'm like, it's fine. I'll accept. I'll read this content. I'll leave. And I've never been targeted by them. So I don't even know if they're using it.
There are multiple ways of looking at it. So see, some publishers probably can have enough technology of their own, right? But if you look at the third parties, right? When I was talking about ad tech tax, it's usually brands don't have probably they might have the wherewithal, but usually they will work with companies which are ad tech companies, right? And like you mentioned, like tech stacks, and basically advertising has become so much more technology oriented.
Yeah, the last 2 years. Last 2 years, I have used the word tech stack more than any other word that I have used. Considering I work in production, which is wasn't even technology driven. And that's, it's a sign of the times, right? Tech runs everything.
So when we talk about ad tech companies, right, and multiple companies tracking you, and even for a brand, it gets a little confusing because there is a lot of fraud, right? There is a lot of click fraud. There are a lot of view frauds. There are a lot of bot frauds, because we are still working in an economy which is where everything needs to be quantified, right? Like probably Web 1 was a little more about creativity, a little more about let's do some cool stuff. I think over the last decade, it's become super efficiency, performance driven, right?
Everything is quantitative.
And there are some places where if someone wants to get like 1 million views, there are ways of probably bots generating those views, right? And when we speak about Web3, people are saying that's when the decentralization will happen, right? So the serving platform is not owned by, say, one specific company. Do you think more brands are going to be more open to such a thing, or people probably don't care?
I think the signs are all there, right? There was I think a few days ago, right before we were recording this, there was a TED talk that Adam Mosseri gave, the Instagram CEO. And he spoke about how things are really going to evolve for creators, keeping Web3, keeping the Metaverse in mind. And one of the things he spoke about is that platforms aren't going to go away, but the fact that we control everything is going to go. It's a sign of where things are really going, and it'll be a lot more with the creator, with the consumer, with the brand than it will be with the platform, because we've gone to a very platform focused world, right?
Agreed.
The platforms run everything, their algos run everything, which is why maybe in Elon Musk, it is considered, I don't think he'll buy it, but that's just me. And this might age badly or age really well, considering when someone's listening to it. But I feel that that's the thing, right? If the decentralization will then bring it back to what you said a little earlier about how, every brand has its own microsite, website, and they want to build a community on that. You want to own your data. You want to bring your consumers in there. You want to build an experience for them. But more than anything else, you want to have the ability to say, okay, if something changes tomorrow, I get to take the call on how I change, not a platform or not somebody else. I think that's really where things are going.
Nicely put.
Yeah, I think that's really where things will go.
Okay, Varun, so, like ever since probably we were in college, right? And there were definitions of what is advertising and what is marketing. And many people have attempted to answer what is advertising and marketing. And you obviously run one of my favorite podcasts, and Advertising is Dead. But this is one for probably our younger listeners, right? Who are probably studying advertising, studying in media schools, right? If someone was to ask you, Varun, what's the difference between advertising and marketing in today's world, and how you see it evolving, right? Like with technology, etc. What would you say to them?
I think advertising and marketing have blended in many ways. I feel advertising is a way in which you market. It's not just marketing. But I feel more than anything else, for someone getting into the industry today, everything can become quantified. But I feel marketing at its essence will be creative, because marketing gives every non-living thing a personality. So while we might put the data there, while the AI might help us, the data might help us to kind of build that personality, build that data. But at the end of the day, base level, what marketing lets you do is take an inanimate object and give it a personality, give it something that makes people connect to it. Like you still connect to a Nike for what it stands for. You connect to, a cred for what it is. Like, I think all those ads that Tanmay and gang do gives cred its personality. Right? How it visually is gives it its personality. So we connect to a personality, we connect to the creativity behind that. The data will feed it, the tech will feed it. But if you have to look at base level today, if a young person is getting into it, you're getting into a creative profession which is supremely powered by tech. It was powered by many other things, but now it's like largely tech driven. But it's still a creative profession. So
this is something which I ask a lot of our guests, right? So if you were to ask 10 years down the line, what are the jobs in this advertising marketing space which are going to crazily evolve and are going to be the stuff which are going to get you hired, the skill sets which are going to get you hired? And what are the jobs which will just be obsolete and will probably, if you're working in that space, you should probably pick up some new skills?
So any job And I'll start with the one which will go away. Any job that can be done by a machine will over time go away. Because, think of someone who's doing adaptations of creatives, right?
Okay.
You have a master creative, you have multiple smaller versions of that creative. Today, you can get that done with a machine.
Okay.
You don't need those set of people who are resizing it. You take one creative, resizing for a hoarding versus resizing for an ad.
Even in online ads, right? Like for multiple different banners, like 460, 860, 728, like you had guys doing multiple.
But you still need the guy to make that first creative, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the human skill, which is a still innately a creative skill.
Okay.
You will need human beings to be involved in doing strategy work. Someone analyzing, like hyper-analyzing base data might slowly become more of a machine.
Okay.
But to look at that data and say, what are the insights I'm drawing from this?
The actionable insights of
will still be a human job. So I think at some point, the repetitive stuff, the more mundane stuff will get more machine-driven. So you need to think about, okay, what is then the core skill set you need to have? The core skill set is that you need to understand how creativity works. You need to understand how strategy works. You need to understand how to analyze data and figure out where that's really led. And creativity can also mean tech. If you understand how technology works, then you are a creative person in today's world. So those are a few buckets I put in, but you also need to figure out where things are really going. You can't just be stuck in the past. For you to understand how social media platforms function today, you need to be a creator. You need to understand how that works. You need to understand how that data dashboard is. How communities are built on a YouTube, for instance, how they're being driven on a Discord. Because a lot of those insights will then gravitate to or rather move towards how it will work in the metaverse.
So probably you'll not just be learning everything from school or college, right? Like the future is going to be about picking up skills from different destinations.
I think school and college has anyway always been, 80% about building a community for yourself and your network. You actually learning enough from it for real world scenario, I think has gone down a lot. If you ask me, I would, 20% of what you study is useful because that's the foundational part. But 80% is really the people you are with and how they go.
The curiosity element also comes in, right?
And also it's the opportunity cost, right? If you are in a certain university, you are in a certain school, you get access to kind of move towards certain job, etc., much more easily than if you didn't. But I think today's world, again, if you look at education, it's actually decentralized because you have people learning things before they even learn that in a college.
Yeah.
Right. YouTube is it's the world's freest university.
A lot less now, right?
Sorry,
because if you have a particular skill set, no one asks you anymore.
Yeah, you need that certification. So, for instance, are you certified as for someone working in digital marketing? Do you have that Google certification? Do you have
does that still matter?
If you're trained by the platform, platforms themselves are pushing a lot of these trainings. I think it helps to have that because they know you at least got the foundational skills there.
Okay.
So you might end up being a person who has multiple certifications, but more taught by the platforms themselves.
Okay.
So I've done, 2 courses through the pandemic. One was on viral brand building because I wanted to understand what that was. And I had access suddenly to someone who's teaching in Yale or Yale or Wharton. It was like a 2-week thing and I just did that course, right? Now that they gave me a way to kind of put that on my LinkedIn profile. So again, that badge is there that I did this with this.
What do you value more, the knowledge which you gained or the badge? The token?
I think it's good to have the token there, but end of the day, the value that I got from it also kind of was very useful. It gave me a different way to look at it. I think that access opens up, right?
Do you think education is one of the first things which will move completely into the metaverse, primarily driven by pandemic, right? Where we saw a lot of kids just for 2 years.
So I thought that till I saw how it is to kind of experiences change. So I have a 4.5-year-old.
Yeah, you're a young father, right? I was asking you that.
So I've seen my daughter through a 1.5 years of virtual learning, but that was more of Zoom and a few other platforms like that. And 3 to 5 months of actual physical school.
With other kids around.
I've seen her progress more in 5 months than I saw her progress in a 1.5 years.
Why do you think that happens? Because
it's again, you're together. You're in the same space. Because in school, in college, you learn through each other. So as much as we might have, teaching can move to a screen, the community aspect can't move to a screen, especially at a certain age, right?
Yeah.
And I feel it might be different when you're a little older, which is why I think the metaverse is interesting because can you replicate that community aspect in a virtual world that doesn't feel like, again, I go back to that, it's still 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional, right? But I think we'll still physically want to be around, but I think the access, and I remember reading somewhere sometime back saying, if you look at how education can be democratized, is that, again, that whole the tax you're willing to pay, you could be someone who can afford to be one of those 100 people who goes to that elite university, be physically a part of that community. Or you could be someone saying, okay, I want that, what they're teaching there, but I can't pay as much. So I will choose to take the digital experience
Okay.
pay a fraction of that cost and figure a way to get that community from where I work. So, I mean, those are choices you can kind of make in life, which were not even there. I mean, distance learning was that, but I don't think correspondence was that at all. Correspondence was like something very different. But I think now, because you can literally see the teacher teaching in the same way, and
I still think it's you need to want to learn, right? Like either the jo jigyasa bolte, the curiosity, the inner thing, because for a lot of people, education, learning, it seems like some people
do I need to do it?
Yeah, people force you to do it, right? So I think education, the way it evolves, has to be like, and that's why we are seeing so many new platforms which are willing to give you skills, but it's still the onus is on you. I still see it's being abused a bit because most of their biggest clients are again corporate firms, which again force their employees to get that certification. But somewhere down the line, I think that's ripe for evolution too.
I think what the point also is that what we forget is that school and college give you almost, there's a period of time when you build who you're going to be. You build and you build that through your peers, right? You kind of not move out of home, but you're largely out of home. You're in college. You're at the age which you're not a kid anymore. And that's when the people you meet in some ways kind of lead you in the direction which you will go. How much of that can happen digitally in the present state, I still don't know. Also because I'm old, I think I've come from a slightly old, earlier time where I felt that was more valuable. I'm seeing more and more of that happen. You don't have that. I don't think you have full community vibe online as much as you can have physically.
Probably.
But I feel, I don't know. The solution could be this, or you could just figure a way to have people in a physical space again.
Varun, so slightly a question on a lighter note, right? Like I've known you as a disgruntled engineering student.
I'm always disgruntled engineering student.
Moving to a media student, working at MTV, setting up your very successful agency Glitch, to becoming one of India's leading podcasters, to writing your own book, being a father, setting up another company. What defines you, Varun?
Curiosity defines me.
Okay.
I'm a genuinely curious person. Like the reason why I would go to a random website, and
accept all the cookies.
It's because I want to know what's going on. And I'm always this person trying to read up on what's kind of happening in the randomest of things. And I feel that really feeds my curiosity. So I'm a curious person. I want to learn things. I'm not a person who wants to have a singular interest in life. I want to do many things. I want to learn different things. I want to put my fingers into different pies. But in a word, I'm a curious person.
That's so great, Varun. Tell me a little more. Okay, probably a last question. 10 years down the line, 2032, okay? And there's Varun, okay? And what is the kind of advertising which Varun is going to experience in his daily life? How do you think the world is going to evolve in just 10? And probably just I'm not saying 100 years down the line, we are all in space, etc. But 10 years down the line, right? What is your daily advertising interaction going to be like?
Anything that is a one-way experience. I'm not talking human. I think anything which is a one-way experience. I'm talking about, let's say, hoarding along the road, or you're looking at if you're inside a car or anything like that. I think everything which is still will become interactive, will become immersive. I think that's the way for advertising to go. Let's look at spaces where you can kind of take on, which right now feels very static.
Okay.
Kind of get into that.
Interactive hoarding.
Interactive hoardings.
It's interactive for everyone. How does that work?
In an ideal world, if I was going in a car and if there's a way for my car to link up to the hoarding and say this person's interested in this, so I will see in the hoarding what interests me versus someone in the adjoining auto.
Or the car window might be a screen, right? It'll automatically filter out.
I guess that's a link up. Right? That's what you see on it. So stuff like that, right? Now, I think we'll get into a more and more personalized advertising space, more immersive in that.
Okay.
But I feel we'll see far and far lesser traditional forms of advertising execution.
Okay.
The essence will stay the same, but what you will get is you'll blend in a lot more into the world in which we'll be at. So how much of a part of that is digital, how much of a part of that is physical, it won't seem as inserted, because I feel what is also happening is with data being taken away as well. Right? On the other side, you're also seeing data suddenly saying this question of Apple's not giving access, Google saying they won't take and all that stuff. What might also happen, the flip, is the fact that we might turn around and say, okay, brands just need to figure out ways to make people come to us rather than us popping into every single place in which they're at, which is where things like, I think, a Nike Land, etc. makes sense, because you are saying, this person wants to go there.
Yeah. Someone's opting in, right?
Yeah,
like
you're not asking them to come here.
Yeah.
I think that's the flip thing. I might actually want to go to, it's like why you want to go to Disneyland. I think Disneyland for me is the world's biggest advertisement for a brand. Right.
Yeah, completely.
If you think about it. And we
People
all want to go there.
it.
We pay for it. You want to go there. You're taking flights. You're going across countries to go there and spending entire days there. Living in their hotels, consuming and buying everything they have.
The Nike guy actually said something very similar, right?
Yeah.
Like he basically said that actually when you look at advertising and marketing on the web, you might have to pay a modern day influencer to wear your swish, right? Yeah. But in our metaverse, people are willing to pay some sort of virtual token currency to wear our badges, right? Like which is incredible. It's like utopia for marketers, maybe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that's the way to go. And if you look at it around, saying even if that's a minute part of what you make as revenue, because eventually you'll still have people buying your product. That's the way to look at it. Don't look at it as just something that is. Again, I go back to my pop-up ad in front of your face example because I think that's the one thing we don't want it to be.
Where did you see your first pop-up ad, Varun?
There's a first pop-up ad.
Was it a porn website?
No, it wasn't, weirdly enough. I think my first thing I went on.
But you know, a little bit of trivia, like pop-up ads were first, apart from just...
the porn industry has allowed some of the biggest breakthroughs in technology online.
In evolution
than any
and
other.
advertising, like text ads, buffering, in-stream ads... subscription.
They've been ahead of the game before any other industry.
Subscription. So where was it? Do you remember your...
Actually, don't.
That was just a joke anyway.
I remember the first website I opened.
Yahoo.
Yeah, I think we all opened Yahoo.
I think we all opened Yahoo.
Opened Yahoo. We all made email IDs. Let me remember that. I think initially we all made email IDs. We all had 15,
Yahoo,
20.
Hotmail, Sabir Bhatia had suddenly become really famous. He sold off
I remember,
to Microsoft.
And that time it was very fun. It was fun to have like different email IDs with interesting last parts. So I think I had unintentionally at cruelintentions.com was an email ID I had. Because that sounded fun.
Bro, I had Eka at lavya.com. I actually owned lavya.com. I used to write it in a way, EK @ It was so cool. It was like the first NFT. I let that website go. But Varun, like closing this fascinating conversation, tell us apart from Advertising is Dead, which is of course one of the advertising podcasts people should listen to. Tell us a couple of more advertising podcasts which our listeners should definitely give a shot.
Internationally, if you look at it, there's a podcast called My First Million, which is a great podcast to listen to because they not just talk about business, they talk about marketing, advertising, all that stuff. It's Shanpuri and Sampar host it. It's on YouTube as well, and it's great to watch. Gives you insight into how businesses are using different aspects of this, and also small business, not just like large ones. I'm just thinking of which other ad ones I listen to. I don't listen to as many advertising ones. I think Sweathead is another, which is a great strategy podcast.
Okay,
I forget the name of the host, but I think that's a nice one as well. In the Indian context, Storytellers and Storysellers is actually a great one to listen to. It's another IBM podcast, and it's got a lot of interesting guests and conversations in that space as well. So, these would be the few. Apart from Pivot, which is my all-time favorite podcast for tech and business, but it's not just advertising, it's a lot more.
Thank you, Varun. It's been a fascinating conversation. We'll definitely catch up on this episode 10 years down the line and see how the world has evolved.
And if Elon Musk actually bought it or not.
Thank you so much, Varun. Great conversation.
Thanks, man.
And that was a great episode of Future Proofing with me, Ekalavya Varun, presented by Intel vPro, built for business. If you liked this episode, please like it, share it, forward it, subscribe to it. And for all you NFT enthusiasts, we're doing something really cool. So we've got this contest running for every episode where we're going to drop NFTs. All you have to do is answer a simple question and you get to win the NFT or some really cool future-proofing merchandise. Where to find the question? Well, you have to follow us on our socials. The IVM socials are IVM Podcasts across all networks. I'm at Ekalavya across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Ekalavya B on Twitter. See you in the next episode.